Now, with Celine Dion pulling back the curtain on her private health struggles, the new documentary, I Am Celine Dion, just premiered, and Celine is opening up about why it's so important for her to bring her fans into this personal battle.
Celine Dion is an iconic singer with a deep connection to her Catholic roots. Though she has been full of surprises, she never lost her faith. But what happened recently inside a church involving her and Pope Francis has left religious communities confused. This occurrence has been kept a secret until now, raising conversations that go far beyond what she can handle. What exactly happened inside that church? In this video, we will reveal what Pope Francis did with Celine Dion inside the church, Celine's health struggles and journey to Rome. Celine Dion has always had a unique take on religion. To her, faith isn't tied to the walls of a church or the rituals people follow. She believes in seeing God in everyday life. She often said that having faith in yourself is just like having faith in God. This belief kept her grounded for years, but everything changed when her health took a serious hit. Her world turned upside down when she was diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological condition that causes muscle stiffness and spasms.
Recently, have been diagnosed with a very rare neurological disorder called stiff person syndrome.
Suddenly, she was stuck between holding on to her faith and accepting her new reality. So what decision did she make? There is more to reveal. Stay tuned for more details. At first, the signs were subtle. Her foot would spasm unexpectedly, and she dismissed it as nothing major. But the spasms kept coming back, getting stronger each time. Soon, performing became nearly impossible.
And now you can show me, yeah. And that's what happens, and it's very difficult for me to hear about and to show this to you.
And she had to cancel her shows. For someone like Celine, who lived for her connection with her fans, this was devastating. 2 years ago, she revealed her diagnosis to the public, explaining that it was the reason she was stepping away from the stage. Fans were heartbroken, but they rallied behind her, sending messages of love and support. During this time, Celine threw herself into treatment. She began physical therapy, vocal exercises, and even athletic training 5 days a week. Doctors were hopeful, but the process was slow and exhausting. Her voice, which had once been her greatest gift, became her biggest challenge. Singing felt like climbing a mountain, each note harder to reach than the last. But despite everything, Celine stayed optimistic. Fast forward to this year, and Celine surprised everyone with a major comeback. She sang at the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics, marking her first public performance in years. Before that, she released a documentary called I Am Celine Dion on Prime Video, giving fans a behind-the-scenes look at her journey. The film showed her struggles, her resilience, and her determination to sing again. But there's another side to her story, one that didn't make it into the documentary. Not long after her performance at the Olympics, Celine visited a small church in Rome, seeking solace. It was a sunny afternoon, and the air felt crisp and fresh. She had been in the city for a medical consultation with a renowned surgeon who specializes in rare neurological conditions. The surgeon, Dr. Lorenzo Moretti, had been working with her for months, and they were discussing a new experimental treatment. The procedure involved deep brain stimulation, where electrodes are implanted in specific areas of the brain to help control muscle spasms. It was a risky surgery, but the results from other patients had been promising. Dr. Moretti explained the process in detail, showing Celine scans of her brain and outlining the steps they would take. She listened carefully, nodding as he spoke, but the weight of it all was overwhelming. After the consultation, Celine felt the need to clear her head. She asked her driver to take her to a nearby church, a quiet place where she could sit and think. The church was a beautiful old building with high ceilings, stained glass windows, and an air of peace. She walked inside, wearing a simple white dress and a beige scarf. Her face looked tired, but there was a softness in her expression as she took in the space around her. The church was almost empty, save for a few people sitting in the pews. Celine found a spot near the back, where the sunlight streaming through the windows painted the floor in vibrant colors. She folded her hands, closed her eyes, and began to pray. Her thoughts were scattered, jumping between her fear of the surgery, her desire to sing again, and her struggle to accept her condition. As she prayed, she didn't notice a figure approaching her. It was Pope Francis. He had been in the church for a private moment of reflection and had noticed her sitting alone. Dressed in his simple white robe, he walked up to her quietly, his face kind and gentle. When she opened her eyes and saw him standing there, she was surprised, but immediately felt a sense of calm. The Pope smiled and gestured for her to join him at the altar. Celine hesitated for a moment, but then stood up and followed him. Together, they lit a candle, its flame flickering gently in the dim light. She whispered another prayer, her voice trembling slightly. The Pope placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, Celine felt a small glimmer of hope. The Pope led her to a side room, a quiet space filled with books and a small desk. They sat down, and he listened as she began to share her story. Her voice wavered as she talked about her diagnosis, her canceled shows, and the emotional toll it had taken on her. She pulled out a small journal from her bag, its pages filled with scribbled notes and personal reflections. She flipped through the journal, showing him entries about her therapy sessions and the moments when she felt like giving up. One page had a sketch of a microphone with the words, "Will I ever sing again?" written next to it. Another page had a list of songs she dreamed of performing once her voice recovered. As she spoke, her hands trembled, and tears began to fill her eyes. She tried to hold them back, but the emotions were too strong. The Pope handed her a tissue, his expression understanding and patient. Celine wiped her tears and continued, her voice growing steadier with each word. She told him about her fear of the upcoming surgery.
Even reported on it when the singer Celine Dion announced she had a rare neurological disease, causing her to cancel some concerts.
How she worried it might not work, or worse, that it could take away the little strength she had left. The Pope nodded, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm of her thoughts. He didn't interrupt, letting her pour out everything she had been holding inside. At one point, Celine showed him a photo on her phone. It was from the night of her last performance before her diagnosis. She looked radiant in the picture, her smile wide and her eyes sparkling. But she told him that even then, she had been in pain, her body struggling to keep up with the demands of the show. The Pope listened intently, his hands folded on the table. His calm demeanor made it easier for her to open up. She talked about her family, her fans, and the immense pressure she felt to stay strong for everyone around her. But most of all, she spoke about her love for music and how much she missed it.
It's such a pleasure to be able to say, I want to talk. You're going to hear my voice.
As the conversation went on, the Pope offered her words of encouragement, reminding her of the strength she had shown in facing her challenges. His voice was gentle but firm, and his words carried a weight that kicked her to cry more. At this point, the Pope wasn't sure if he was doing the right thing by trying to console her. But what happens next will shock you. Celine finds peace with Pope Francis. As the Pope observed Celine's quiet tears, he sensed she needed more than just kind words. He gestured for her to follow him deeper into the church. They walked past the rows of pews and through a small carved wooden door. Beyond it was a private garden hidden from the bustling world outside. The garden was peaceful, with neatly trimmed hedges and a fountain in the center. Water trickled softly, creating a calming rhythm that filled the silence. Celine hesitated at first, but the Pope encouraged her with a small nod. She stepped onto the cobblestone path, feeling the warmth of the sun breaking through the trees above. The fresh air, mixed with the faint smell of flowers, brought a strange sense of relief to her chest. She walked toward the fountain, her footsteps echoing in the quiet space. The Pope guided her to a stone bench near the water. As she sat, she let her hands trail across the cool surface of the bench. The Pope stood nearby, his hands clasped together in thought. Without speaking, he motioned to the fountain. Celine turned her attention to the water. Its gentle ripples caught the sunlight, reflecting tiny bursts of light. The Pope spoke softly, pointing out how water could carve through stone over time, no matter how hard the stone was. The words struck a chord in Celine. She sat quietly, watching the ripples, her mind beginning to calm. She closed her eyes and focused on the sound of the water. The Pope stepped aside, allowing her a moment of solitude. After a while, he returned holding a small jar of holy water. He dipped his fingers into it and placed a drop on Celine's forehead. She felt the cool touch, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to take a deep breath. The Pope said nothing more, but his actions felt meaningful, even without words. As they left the garden, he led her to a side chapel rarely opened to visitors. Inside was a painting of Mary holding the infant Jesus. The room was lit with soft candles, their warm glow creating a serene atmosphere. Celine stared at the painting, her eyes lingering on Mary's gentle expression. She felt an odd comfort, as if the image was speaking to her heart. The Pope handed her a small wooden rosary, its beads polished smooth from years of use. Celine held it tightly, her fingers tracing the shape of each bead. It felt grounding, like a connection to something larger than her struggles. He encouraged her to stay in the chapel as long as she needed. She sat on the wooden bench, her head bowed, and let the stillness of the space wash over her. She thought about her journey, the endless doctor visits, the physical therapy, and the surgeries. She remembered how hopeless she had felt after her diagnosis, wondering if she would ever sing again. Her mind shifted to the difficult moments, times when her muscles froze mid-performance, leaving her unable to move. She thought about the hours spent in rehabilitation, pushing her body to regain strength. There were days when the pain felt unbearable, yet she had kept going. Sitting in the chapel now, she felt something shift inside her. The Pope returned after a while, carrying a small box. Inside was a vial of oil used for anointing the sick. He gently anointed her hands, which had been trembling moments ago. The warmth of the oil seemed to seep into her skin, and she felt her hands relax slightly. He then took out a thick, leather-bound book filled with handwritten prayers collected from people all over the world. He flipped through its pages, showing her messages from strangers who had prayed for her recovery. Celine was surprised by how many people had written about her, some sharing how her music had touched their lives. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't from sadness. This nearly unbelievable miracle was witnessed by thousands of people, and it became known as the miracle of the sun.
Everybody was saying that if the miracle did not happen, the whole family would die. And so he stayed home. He was afraid. And because he was afraid to die, he wasn't there when the miracle of the sun occurred.
These experiences led to the acceptance of the first, second, and third secrets of Fatima that the lady shared with the children. So, what were these secrets? You're about to find out. Unveiling the secrets of Fatima. While 3 children received the secrets from the lady, only one of them was able to share what the lady said to them. Shortly after the apparition experience, something devastating happened in Fatima, leaving only Sister Lucia to recount the secrets that the lady had shared with her and her cousins. Francisco and Jacinta had died 1 year apart from each other due to the outbreak of the flu in Fatima. Although severely ill, Francisco spent most of his years after the vision offering his life as a penance to console the Lord, despite his health. Jacinta also suffered a similar fate as she spent her time praying and offering her sufferings for praying for peace in the world, the unsaved, and the Holy Father. When they died, in 1919 and 1920 respectively, Francisco was initially buried in the parish cemetery, and Jacinta was buried in her family tomb and later interred at the parish cemetery. By 1930, the Catholic Church declared that the miracle of the sun was worthy of belief. Later, in 1952, a tomb was prepared in the basilica at Cova da Iria, where they were buried to the right and left of the main altar respectively. They became beatified in 1979, and they were declared venerable by Pope John Paul II on the 13th of May, 1989. Lucia, on the other hand, survived the flu, and by 1921, she joined the College of Villars and was sent to Tuy. She made her confession as a nun on October 3, 1934. 7 years later, she wrote in her memoir, The Secret of the Fatima, that she received alongside her late cousins over 2 decades earlier. Now, let's look at the first secret. The first secret was a sea of fire that the lady showed them. It seemed to be beneath the earth, and she saw souls and demons in the fire. They were floating in the blazing fire like transparent burning embers. The flames of the fire made them rise into the air and fall back without weight, yet amidst shrieks and groans of pain. The souls had a human form, but the demons looked terrifying like unknown animals and were black yet transparent. She described the sight as terrifying. After this vision lasted, the lady made them know that there was something that could be done to save many souls from going to hell, for wars to end, and for peace to reign. She told them that this would happen if people stopped offending God, but if not, something worse would happen. Truly, the fulfillment of her requests marked the end of the First World War, which was currently raging at the time. The lady shared the second secret with the children, telling them to devote themselves to her immaculate heart. It made the children so happy knowing that her heart would be their refuge and lead them to God. They would often sing happily while picking wildflowers, calling on Sweet Mary to be their salvation, convert sinners, and save their souls from hell.
Do you wish to offer yourself to God, to endure all the suffering He may please to send you, to help atone for the sins by which He is offended, and to ask for the conversion of sinners?
She made them understand that God intended to establish the world's devotion to her immaculate heart. She promised to be with them always and comfort them and lead them to God through her heart. She guaranteed them that her immaculate heart would triumph in the end, ensuring that they were facing the route to heaven. She shared with the seers that a worse war would break out during the pontificate of Pius V. She also gave them a sign to prove it. They would see an unknown light illuminating a night as a sign that God was about to punish the world with wars, famine, and persecution for all of its crimes. The only way to prevent this from happening was to consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart and offer the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. Upon heeding her request, peace would be restored and Russia would be converted. Without this, the world could expect wars, persecutions of the Church, and martyrdoms. If the Holy Father consecrated Russia to him, the world would enjoy a period of peace, she said. Now that we have the first 2 secrets, let's move to the last one, the third secret of Fatima. When Lucia shared the third secret, she wrote it in a sealed envelope because although she was compelled to share it by her bishop, she didn't think it was time to reveal it yet, as she felt it should be left till a much later time when the secret would have a proper context to be explained. After about 19 years, the sealed letter was opened in 1960, but it wasn't revealed until about 40 years later, in the year 2000. In the vision, she saw an angel with a flaming sword, and the flames flashed as though they would set the world ablaze. The angel was on the lady's left and held the sword in his left hand. The fury of the flames that emanating from the sword was swamped in the splendor of the lady's radiance from the direction of her right hand. At that, the angel kept shouting for penance, then an immense light appeared before them. She saw an image of someone who looked like the bishop, dressed in white, in immense light, similar to how people appear in a mirror when they pass in its front. From their knowledge, they had the presumption that the person was the Holy Father. Now, what they see next will shock you. Next, they saw various people of religious caliber and ranks, bishops, priests, men and women, all going up a steep mountain, and on it was a huge cross hewn from the trunks of a cork tree. As the father walked on in pain and sorrow, he walked through a big city that was half in ruins, and with trembling he prayed for the corpse he met on his way up the cross. On getting to the cross, a group of soldiers fired bullets and arrows at him, and he died. Similarly, all the other people were killed at the foot of the cross. 2 angels standing beneath the arms of the cross held a crystal aspersorium, and they gathered the blood of those who were martyred in it, sprinkling their souls as they made their way to God. On the 13th of May, 1981, exactly 64 years after the first Marian apparition, an assassination attempt on the life of Pope John Paul II occurred. The perpetrator, Ali Agca, fired bullets at the Holy Father 4 times in a row. This later led to an intense 5-hour surgical operation in a bid to save the Pope's life. Yet as the Pope began to recover, he spoke from his hospital bed that he had forgiven the brother who struck him. It wasn't until 2 months after that the Pope was able to return home. Now, could this be the fulfillment of the third secret of Fatima? The Pope attributed his miraculous escape from the near-death experience to the kindness of the Virgin Mary. He visited the shrine of Fatima in Portugal the following year to present the bullet that almost took his life as a gesture of thanks. It was later welded into the crown of the Queen's statue, as it found an empty space at the union of the 8 stems that made up the crown. Some have attributed these miraculous events to be the fulfillment of the third secret of Fatima. As a matter of fact, the Vatican reported in year 2000 that everything concerning the third secret had been fulfilled. But guess what? It didn't end there. Later, Pope Benedict XVI shared profound insight into the third secret when he was a cardinal. Then Cardinal Ratzinger, he shared that there was no great mystery to be revealed, and neither was the future unveiled. Disappointing as these might seem when compared to the scary details of the revelation, he shared that the purpose of the vision wasn't to paint a picture of the future as one that could not be irrevocably fixed, but rather meant to mobilize the forces of change in the right direction. He further debunked the claim that the person who attempted to assassinate the Holy Father was acting based on a divine agenda. It also cleared the air about Ali Agca's lack of choice in the scheme of things, as some have assumed. He concluded that the vision focused on various dangers and how we might be saved from them. Authenticity of Marian apparitions. The Secrets of Fatima and the Apparition of Mary in Fatima is just one out of the many approved appearances of Mary recorded by the Catholic Church. While it's not impossible that some are fabricated, the Church undergoes a series of processes to evaluate their authenticity. A Marian apparition is first subject to evaluation by the bishop of the diocese where it occurred, and may also be subject to further evaluation according to the Vatican, with an assessment of the character and person of the person who claims to experience them. Now, let's explore some of the most popular apparitions. Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared in 1531 to Saint Juan Diego and asked that a church be erected in her honor.
Juan Diego, Tlashikaki no Shokoyo Juanzin. Campa intimawika.
Siguapele.
When he wasn't believed, she arranged flowers in his cloak on his 4th apparition experience. When he went back again to raise the petition, something interesting happened. The flowers fell off his cloak when he opened it, and the image of Our Lady could be seen on the fabric. A basilica now stands in Mexico City in her honor, and the image is still visible there. In another small French town, Saint Bernadette, a young boy received Marian apparitions 18 times. During those times, she would ask people to offer prayers and turn toward God. With her help, the young child also discovered a spring that could miraculously heal people. While she mostly appeared to people with a message, she appeared to Saint Joseph and Saint John in 1879 in the town of Knock. She appeared to them as they stood and prayed in the rain, sending a non-verbal message of peace and comfort to them. A spectacular appearance bearing a deep message to 3 children also happened in Kibeho, Rwanda. Within a space of 8 years between 1981 and 1989, she appeared to them thrice, asking them to pray the rosary thrice daily. She also told them that a tragedy was going to occur. Many believe that the 1994 genocide was the fulfillment of this prophecy. However, in her message to them, she made it clear that her message to them was for the world, not just for Africa or Rwanda alone. In the United States, Adele Bryce also experienced a Marian apparition in 1859, where she was told to pray that sinners would be converted and also teach children nearby about the Catholic faith. Another interesting Marian apparition occurred in 1973, exactly 56 years after her appearance to the Little Shepherds of Fatima. Sister Agnes Sasagawa received the message of Mary, calling the world to repentance and praying the rosary in Akita, Japan. Now this leads to the question, what is the significance of the Marian apparition in Fatima, and what truth has Pope Francis revealed on the third secret of Fatima? Pope Francis and the third secret of Fatima. The third secret of the Fatima reflects the breakout of wars and martyrdoms, and in some way, it seems Pope Francis has revealed some subtle truths about this third secret. He made it clear as he declared that World War III had begun in a piecemeal fashion when he condemned the attack on Paris in November 2015, and again in January 2023, he also made a call to put a stop to what was beginning to look like the start of the Third World War in different parts of the world. This clearly indicates the role of the Pope in the fulfillment of the third secret of Fatima. As Cardinal Ratzinger rightly said, the vision is an indicator of what we should do to enforce change in the right direction. This means it does not directly lay any emphasis on the role of a specific pope, such as Pope Francis, in the fulfillment of these prophecies. Rather, it may reflect the role of the papacy in enforcing change through its successive positions as the world nears its end. The prophecy reveals that the angels continue to cry penance beneath the arm of the cross. This reflects nothing truer as the number of Christian martyrdoms is on the rise. This evidence makes it clear that there is an ongoing war in the world which may be different from what we've seen in the First and Second World Wars. On separate occasions, the Holy Father, Francis, has made reference to the global wars, stating that it's happening in a piecemeal fashion. He charged his listeners with the need to stop the wars going on around us in places like Syria and Ukraine. Just like it was shown in the third secret of Fatima, he made it clear that wars hurt a lot of people, especially innocent young lives and old people. He shared that there is a need to put a stop to the wars to make the world a safe and happy place to live in. In his charge, he pointed out the need to establish reforms for the people who have been victims of war, for them to live happy lives again. With these, it becomes even clearer that the papacy is truly an agent of change in shaping a future for mankind as revealed in the third secret. Now that this secret has been revealed, what do we know about the fulfillment of other instructions of the Lady? After the series of visions received by the children, Lucia later received another appearance of Mother Mary in 1929, when she received further parts of the secrets of Fatima. It was during this appearance that Senior Lucia again received the request that Russia should be consecrated to her Immaculate Heart. This revelation has led to continuous prayers requesting Mary's intercession for the conversion of Russia. This was done in 1942 by Pope Pius V during the Second World War. These continued to be a practice for succeeding popes, including Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis. The urgency and need to pray the rosary for Russia was born from the rise of the Communist Party, which ultimately denied the existence of God and the period of Joseph Stalin's reign, when he imprisoned and executed millions of people, including Christians. This consecration of Russia was at the heart of the world's peace, as the threat of annihilation remained evident in the face of Russia's nuclear weapons. When Archbishop Tadeusz Kondrusiewicz from Moscow visited Sister Lucia, she asked if he was openly practicing as an archbishop in the city, and when he replied yes, she replied that it meant that the prophecy of Fatima had been fulfilled. Now, the Archbishop has also shared that the statue of Our Lady of Fatima stands in every church in his country. With the fulfillment of this prophecy, what does this mean for the fulfillment of the third secret? Now that we've explored the Pope's position on the third secret of Fatima, what do you think about the revelation of Saint Lucia and how it applies to our world? Do you think Celine would feel better about herself after her encounter with the Pope? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Click on the next video displayed on your screen you will enjoy it.